what's going on, guys? It's Jay Mass, and I'm back again with another dope New England adventure. And on this beautiful fall day, we're going to be visiting several stone observation towers here in the state of Connecticut. New England is full of stone observation towers, and Connecticut is no exception. We'll be focusing on 5 of these towers, specifically within western Connecticut, which is the more hilly and rugged region of the state. In the span of one single day, Saturday to be specific, we'll be traveling to each of these towers and exploring them in depth. It goes without saying, but just to clarify, a stone observation tower is a tower made primarily out of stone, used for observing scenic vistas, typically from a high elevation. You'll often find these towers in parks, forests, and mountains, especially along hiking trails. Anyways, let's get into it. 5 stone observation towers in the state of Connecticut. Getting to this tower was quick and easy at roughly 15 minutes round trip from the parking lot nearby. After a scenic hike through the woods, which was admittedly slightly steep at points, I finally arrived at the summit of Haystack Mountain, where the Haystack Mountain Tower stands. Located within Haystack Mountain State Park in Norfolk, Connecticut, this tower is built on the highest point of the summit at 1,680 feet or 510 meters above sea level. The tower itself, however, stands at 50 feet or 15 meters tall and is mostly built out of dark gray granite. Constructed in 1929 by Eric K. Rossiter, Haystack Mountain Tower is a beautiful example of medieval Tudor Revival architecture. The funds to build the tower were donated by Ellen Battelle Stokel, who also donated much of the land that is now Haystack Mountain State Park. The interior of the tower was just as beautiful as the exterior, and I climbed the concrete spiral staircase all the way to the top, passing by the occasional window slit. At the very top of the tower, a wooden ceiling hovered just above my head, while the observation deck itself offered incredible views of nearby mountains and hills. From the top of this tower, one can see parts of Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York, and I personally enjoyed the fall foliage beginning to take form in the trees below. I was definitely appreciating the stellar views, which you can get a taste of here. The observation deck itself was quite ornate, with more gorgeous granite architecture and 8 viewable openings, although there was quite a bit of graffiti, which was disappointing. Still, we're starting this journey off strong with Haystack Mountain Tower in Norfolk, Connecticut, a tower I'd highly recommend. This tower took a bit longer to hike to and from, at around 40 minutes round trip from where I parked. Despite the prevalence of roots and rocks sticking out, it was an overall easy and scenic hike, and I enjoyed it. Eventually, I arrived at Mount Tom Tower, located at the summit of Mount Tom in the namesake Mount Tom State Park. While this tower is fully within the town of Washington, Connecticut, it stands just a few feet away from the town border with Litchfield, Connecticut. The summit of Mount Tom, where the tower is built, reaches a height of 1,289 feet or 393 meters above sea level, but the tower itself stands at 34 feet or 10 meters tall. Completed in 1921 by John DeRoss and Sons, Mount Tom Tower is primarily built out of rough black gneiss. Interestingly, the stone tower replaced a temporary wooden structure which used to stand here, originally built in 1888. As I stepped inside the tower, I was greeted by a series of metal staircases leading upwards, built at different intervals and angles. It was an admittedly interesting way to get up to the top, and along the way I caught glimpses of the views outside through the various window slits. I finally arrived at the top of the tower, which was completely roofless and open. While not as dramatic as the previous tower, the views from Mount Tom Tower's observation deck were incredible nonetheless, which you can see here. While standing on top, one can see the states of Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York, although I'll admit, most of the view was obscured by dense trees. The observation deck itself was also a bit smaller, partially blocked by the metal guardrail in place. While I was here, I had to move out of the way for an incoming family due to the cramped size. Still, I absolutely loved Mount Tom Tower in Washington, Connecticut, a worthy tower after a worthy hike. Once again, I had another quick hike between roughly 12 to 15 minutes round trip from the parking lot. The hike was very flat and easy, but offered stellar views along the way. After a short walk, I arrived at Camp Columbia Tower, located within Camp Columbia State Park in the town of Morris, Connecticut. The elevation of this park is slightly lower, at 1,024 feet or 312 meters above sea level, but the tower itself stands at 60 feet or 18 meters tall. This tower is particularly striking, as much of the spiral staircase leading up to the top observation deck is on the exterior of the tower, halfway up. The history of this tower, and Camp Columbia State Park at large, is absolutely fascinating. This site was once used as an external campus for Columbia University's engineering department, founded in 1903 and in use up until 1983. Camp Columbia had quite a storied history. During World War I, military training exercises, including combat training, were commonplace, and in 1948, then president of Columbia University, Dwight D. Eisenhower, visited the site, who would later become President of the United States. The tower itself was built in 1942, primarily out of local fieldstone. It was originally a water tower and was presented by Columbia University's class of 1906. It was refurbished as recently as 2017. Despite a short section of wooden staircase inside the tower, down at the entrance, the best part of climbing up was walking along the exterior spiral staircase, made of concrete blocks fastened in place to the side of the tower. I was treated to scenic views as I worked my way up to the top, and it truly was a unique architectural design, something I'd never witnessed before. The top observation deck was quite fascinating, with a wooden ceiling above my head and ornate stonework with several windows offering gorgeous viewpoints. I'll admit, the views from the top of Camp Columbia Tower were not as dramatic as the previous two towers I visited. Most of what I saw was the field directly below the tower, and the tops of trees engulfing the park. Still, with the fall colors coming in, I greatly enjoyed the vista, soaking it in. My biggest gripe with the tower's observation deck was the graffiti, which was particularly bad here. Much of the structure was covered in juvenile tagging, degrading its historic integrity. Still, I quite enjoyed Camp Columbia Tower here in Morris, Connecticut, boasting one of the most unique staircases of any tower I visited on this journey. Also, I wanted to quickly point out this cool abandoned building I stumbled upon while hiking to the tower. This is known as the Instrument House, one of many former buildings used during Camp Columbia's days of operation. Likely built in the early 20th century, this instrument house stands now as decaying ruins, tagged with graffiti and experiencing significant structural deterioration. It's only a single hollow room, and I could not find any specific details on what it was used for. Still, as a longtime urban explorer who loves abandoned ruins, this was a fascinating structure to randomly happen upon, and yet another example of Camp Columbia State Park's rich history. No hiking was required for this next tower. Instead, there's a road that lets you drive right up to it. You can see from this footage that I filmed while driving back down that it's a very narrow and winding road, reaching all the way to the summit of a mountain, so be careful if you ever decide to drive up. I arrived at our next stone observation tower, Castle Craig, located on the summit of East Peak within the hanging hills of Hubbard Park here in the city of Meriden, Connecticut. The summit of East Peak reaches 976 feet, or 297 meters above sea level, while Castle Craig itself stands at 32 feet, or 10 meters tall. Built in 1900 by Hubbard Park's namesake donor, Walter Hubbard, this tower is primarily built out of trap rock, which is the main geological composition of the hanging hills. Interestingly, nobody knows exactly where the design for Castle Craig comes from. The main theories are that it is based off of a Norman French tower, a medieval Turkish tower, or an ancient Scottish tower. It should be noted, though, that the name Castle Craig is derived from a tower in Scotland. Inside the tower, a simple metal staircase led me up to the observation deck, illuminated by small windows along the way. Once I got to the top of the tower, I was immediately enamored by an expansive view of Connecticut's hilly southern coast, stretching all the way to the Long Island Sound. I think it's safe to say that Castle Craig boasts the best scenic views of any tower I visited on this trip by a long shot. They truly were incredible, and the videos really don't do its majestic beauty justice. As mentioned, you can see the coastline along the glistening Long Island Sound, as well as the city of New Haven and its metro area. Other nearby soaring hills and mountains are visible, and I even saw several birds of prey flying by, including hawks and eagles. The top of the tower, however, was quite cramped, with not too much room to move around. As you could probably see from the footage, Castle Craig was absolutely packed with people today, and this led to the observation deck being cramped with curious visitors. Navigating around them was something of a challenge. I should also mention that there were quite a few bees buzzing around the tower's top while I was filming, which was a bit annoying. Regardless, I absolutely loved Castle Craig here in Meriden, Connecticut. Definitely check this one out if you're ever in the area. This next hike was truly something. This was by far the longest hike to any tower, at slightly over an hour round trip from where I parked. It was also quite challenging, I'll admit. There was a lot of rock climbing and clambering involved, and some very steep treks that even got me panting. That being said, the hike up was absolutely gorgeous, and without a doubt the most beautiful and scenic forest I ventured in on this journey. It felt like there was something new to see with each corner I turned. Eventually, I reached Sleeping Giant Observation Tower, located at the summit of Sleeping Giant and the namesake Sleeping Giant State Park within the town of Hamden, Connecticut. The summit reaches an elevation of 739 feet, or 225 meters tall, while the tower itself stands at roughly 38 feet, or 12 meters tall. The tower itself was built by the Works Progress Administration, a Great Depression-era agency born from President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. Constructed in 1936, the four-story tower bears a Romanesque design, primarily built out of local fieldstone. Interestingly, the tower briefly served as a lookout tower during World War II, used to scan the skies for enemy aircraft. Sleeping Giant Observation Tower was by far the largest tower I visited on the trip, and the inside was like a maze, with various rooms and halls. There were even a few empty rooms down at the base of the tower that led to nowhere, with nothing inside. There was also a small picnic area with an accompanying fireplace, perfect to hang out after a long hike. What I found unique about the tower was that, instead of stairs leading up to the top, there was a concrete ramp, built for the accessibility of all rather than only those who can climb. Eventually, I made my way up to the top observation deck, and I gotta be honest, it was very busy. There were dozens of people cramped together up here, all enjoying the views. And the views really were spectacular, offering 360-degree views of the surrounding area, from other nearby hills to the Long Island Sound along the southern Connecticut coastline. Although some of the best scenic vistas were at the very top, I also found that the lower stories had great views as well, especially when you peek from out of the windows on each floor. It truly felt like wandering inside a large, empty castle with much to see. No wonder this place was so busy. I gotta say, Sleeping Giant Observation Tower in Hamden, Connecticut was truly one of a kind, and certainly a reward for completing such a strenuous, challenging hike. I want to end this section off by ranking all 5 of these Connecticut stone observation towers in 2 separate categories. Of course, this is my own personal, subjective opinion. In terms of scenic views from each tower, I'd rank Castle Craig as my favorite by far, followed by Haystack Mountain Tower in second, then Sleeping Giant Observation Tower in third, then Mount Tom Tower in fourth, and finally Camp Columbia Tower in last place. In terms of architectural design, I'd rank Sleeping Giant Observation Tower as my overall favorite, followed by Castle Craig in second, Camp Columbia Tower in third, Haystack Mountain Tower in fourth, and Mount Tom Tower in last place. I'd be curious to hear what your own personal rankings are for the Connecticut towers. Yo guys, I'm back once again, and today I'm going to be visiting several stone observation towers here in the state of Massachusetts. Once again, we'll be visiting 5 more stone observation towers, this time throughout the state of Massachusetts in one day, specifically on Sunday. Much like our previous journey in Connecticut, we'll be checking each of these towers out and seeing what's in store, from the hike, to the scenery, to the architecture and design itself. Without further ado, let's get right into it and see what my home state of Massachusetts has to offer. This is yet another tower that doesn't require any hiking. You can drive right up to it, and the drive itself is quite short, at maybe 3 minutes max. That being said, the drive is quite narrow with lots of potholes, so be cautious. Anyways, I arrived at Poet Seat Tower, located atop Rocky Mountain in Rocky Mountain Park within the city of Greenfield, Massachusetts. This is a personal favorite of mine, and it's a tower I've visited dozens of times in the past. Poet Seat Tower sits at an elevation of just above 400 feet, or 122 meters above sea level, and towers over the city of Greenfield. Built in 1912, the tower is primarily built out of sandstone, replacing an earlier wooden tower that was previously built there in 1879. The tower is named in honor of Frederick Goddard Tuckerman, a local poet who frequented the peak throughout the mid-1800s. In fact, Tuckerman himself referred to the peak as Poet Seat in 1850, writing several of his own poems there. While the interior of the tower is also composed of the same beautiful sandstone that adorns the exterior, you'll notice that much of it is riddled with graffiti. My main gripe with Poet Seat Tower is that it is very heavily tagged with graffiti, which admittedly takes away a bit of the charm. Nonetheless, I made my way up the metal staircase, all the way until I reached a small spiral staircase leading to the top. The roofless, open observation deck, while small, offers expansive views of the city of Greenfield and the rugged, hilly terrain of Pioneer Valley. But unfortunately, you can't see any of that right now. As you can probably tell from the footage, I picked possibly the worst time to visit this tower, as I was directly in the center of a thick, foggy cloud with zero visibility. To make it up to you, I'll include a few pictures I took from the top of Poet Seat Tower back in 2021. As you can see, the surrounding area is stunning, and the tower's observation deck provides fantastic views. The top of the tower itself, although small and graffiti covered, is quite pretty, and I really like the stonework and simplicity of it. Poet Seat Tower in Greenfield, Massachusetts truly is a nostalgic favorite of mine, even if I picked a bad time to visit it with all the fog. Once again, I embarked on another brief hike to get to the next tower, which ended up being slightly over 20 minutes round trip from the parking lot. The hike was chill and easy overall, with a slight incline most of the way up. Eventually, I reached the aptly named Stone Tower, located at the top of Burl Hill in Lynn Woods Reservation in the city of Lynn, Massachusetts. The elevation of Burl Hill is 285 feet, or 87 meters above sea level, while Stone Tower itself stands at 48 feet, or 15 meters tall. This tower was built in 1936 by the Works Progress Administration, a Great Depression-era New Deal agency which we discussed previously in the video. Primarily built out of stone and mortar, the original function of the tower was a fire observation tower. The design of this tower is interesting, as there is an exterior concrete staircase leading up to an entrance halfway up the tower. The tower itself is octagonal, with several floors connected by a spiral staircase within. Unfortunately, I picked the wrong time to visit Stone Tower. It is only open to the public Tuesdays through Saturdays, and I was visiting on a Sunday, one of the 2 days it's closed. Just my luck, huh? Although I wasn't able to venture inside the tower and get interior footage or see the views from above, I still enjoyed my time walking around the outside, taking in the majesty of the tower's stunning stone architecture. While I've never been inside before, I'll have to return again when it's open and see what it's like. Open or closed, definitely make the hike over to Stone Tower in Lynn, Massachusetts if you ever find yourself walking throughout the vast trail network at Lynn Woods Reservation. This next hike was much more engaging, albeit quick, at over 25 minutes round trip from the route I took. Much of this trail was at a steep incline, trekking up a rocky, rooted pathway towards the peak of a cliff face. I'd say it's a moderate hike, despite its short length. I finally arrived at Wright's Tower, located at the summit of Pine Hill within the sprawling Middlesex Fells Reservation in the city of Medford, Massachusetts. While Pine Hill's summit elevation is 243 feet or 74 meters above sea level, Wright's Tower is one of the shortest towers I've explored on this journey. This is yet another product of the Works Progress Administration of the 1930s, specifically built during 1937 as an observation tower. Built out of local stone, Wright's Tower is named for Elizur Wright, a New England mathematician and abolitionist who is often referred to as the father of life insurance for his work at regulating the life insurance industry. He was also a member of the Forestry Association and campaigned for the creation of Middlesex Fells Reservation. While it was not created during his lifetime, as he died in 1885, it was established just a few years later in 1893. Once again, my luck is running thin. Wright's Tower was closed, with no way inside. Unfortunately, Wright's Tower does not appear to have a clear schedule as to when it is open, so it's purely based on luck. While I have been inside the tower before, this only happened once out of dozens of times visiting the place. Nonetheless, you can still enjoy stellar views from the cliff faces of Pine Hill. While standing on a rocky outcrop, you can clearly see the city of Boston and the Boston Harbor, as well as the bustling traffic along Interstate 93. This scenic vista is one of my favorite spots for views of the Boston skyline, and on especially clear days, it really is an incredible thing to witness. Even if the tower is closed, it's well worth the hike to enjoy these stunning views. If you ever find yourself hiking up Pine Hill in Medford, Massachusetts, within the sprawling Middlesex Fells Reservation system, just cross your fingers and hope you'll be lucky enough to enter inside Wright's Tower. Man, I cannot wait to check out Norumbega Tower in Weston, Massachusetts. You guys are going to absolutely love this stone observation tower. I'm so excited to show it to you guys. Let's check it out. Oh shit. So yeah, luck is just not on my side today. Sadly, Norumbega Tower in Weston, Massachusetts was under construction, completely closed and inaccessible. I'm not exactly sure when these renovations will be over and when the tower will be back up, but it's a shame I couldn't explore it with you guys. Norumbega Tower honestly has the most interesting history and backstory of any stone observation tower in this video, and I'd rather save that for another video when it's back open. Thus, I'll be cutting this segment short, but I promise I will return again in the future and make a dedicated standalone video on this tower. It's truly fascinating. My last hike of the trip was a calm and steady one with great fall scenery. I began my ascent up a slightly inclined auto road, stretching up to the summit of a small mountain. Once I reached the top of the road, I then embarked on a short trail through the woods, before finally reaching the tower. I officially arrived at the Great Blue Hill Observation Tower, often referred to locally as Elliott Tower, situated nearby the summit of Great Blue Hill in Milton, Massachusetts, within the namesake Blue Hills Reservation. While not directly located on the summit, it is close enough. The elevation of Great Blue Hill reaches 635 feet, or 194 meters above sea level, and the tower itself stands at 35 feet, or 11 meters tall. As you can see from the structure's architectural design and style, it bears a striking resemblance to Wright's Tower, which we covered previously. The Great Blue Hill Observation Tower was built between 1937 and 1938 by the Civilian Conservation Corps, another New Deal labor program launched by Franklin D. Roosevelt during the 1930s. The Rubblestone Tower was built in honor of Charles Elliott, a local landscape architect who helped form the Trustees of Reservations. Luckily, this tower was accessible, and I was able to venture inside. Despite its small size, I worked my way up the concrete staircase system, passing by window slits bearing striking beams of light. The top observation deck was packed with people, and I was admittedly a bit cramped standing up there due to its small size. Nonetheless, the views from this tower were phenomenal, and I found myself enjoying it immensely. Once again, I was able to take in stunning views of the towering Boston skyline, several miles away. The Boston Harbor and some of the South Shore is also visible, all while the color-soaked trees engulf the region. With a rustic wooden ceiling above my head and beautiful stonework defining the observation deck, I quite enjoyed my time up top, despite its size. One other interesting thing about the Great Blue Hill Observation Tower is its adjoined pavilion, which is also visible from the top deck. This pavilion, which was also built by the CCC in the late 1930s, is a peaceful gathering place for families, hikers, and picnic goers, built out of the same material as the tower. I'd highly recommend giving the Great Blue Hill Observation Tower in Milton, Massachusetts a visit, especially if you're hiking in Blue Hills Reservation. Not only are their views incredible, but it's a nice place to stop and rest mid-hike. Once again, I'll be giving my subjective personal rankings of all 5 stone observation towers in Massachusetts, albeit with some exceptions. In terms of scenic views, my all-time favorite is Poet Seat Tower, followed by Wright's Tower in second, then Great Blue Hill Observation Tower in third, but I'll have to disqualify Stone Tower and Norumbega Tower since I've never been to the top of either of them. In terms of architectural design, I also have Poet Seat Tower in first place, followed by Stone Tower in second, Great Blue Hill Observation Tower in third, and Wright's Tower in fourth. Once again, I'm disqualifying Norumbega Tower since we didn't really get a chance to have a good look at it.
Hey, thank you guys for joining me. I've been J-Mass as always, and this has been another dope New England adventure. And in this video, we explored several stone observation towers between the states of Connecticut and Massachusetts. And it was an absolute blast. I really enjoyed it because I do love stone observation towers. Been going to them for years. They offer great scenic views. The architecture is often quite interesting and the history very rich. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, the Connecticut trip was an absolute blast. We got to see 5 really unique stone observation towers and get inside of all of them. The Massachusetts trip, that was more of a mixed bag, admittedly. 2 of the towers were inaccessible, and one of them, Norumbega Tower, was under construction. It wasn't even open, so that was a little frustrating, but still had a great time showing you guys all of the towers nonetheless. 10 really fascinating stone observation towers between Connecticut and Massachusetts, or 9 if you don't count Norumbega Tower. I'll get to that someday, but anyways, guys, my name's been J-Mass as always. If you love urban exploration, checking out abandoned sites, or just traveling New England and beyond, I'm always doing that on this channel, so feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. I also want to give a major shout out to all my channel members. You can see them all right here. You guys are awesome, and I'd love it if you too, viewer of this video, would consider becoming a channel member as well. You'd be supporting me and the channel directly, and I truly appreciate it. Or you can follow me on Instagram at JMassOfficial. That's at JMassOfficial. But again, I've been J-Mass as always. Stone observation towers in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And honestly, if you'd like me to cover other New England states someday in the future, let me know. I'd love to do that. I'd love to check out some stone observation towers in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and Rhode Island. So let me know what you're thinking, and maybe I'll do it. See you guys later. Peace.